Hi, this is Mike making my video to add to my collection. It's 4/17/2025 and it's 7:58 p.m. Uh, I basically got to the point in life where, through trial and error, through many repetitions and through, uh, many setbacks, and many things, many trials and tribulations and many experiences, both positive and negative. But I basically got to the point in life where, I pretty much realized what the whole facade really is. Uh, uh, we wear masks, and our ego, pretty much paints a picture. Gives us this, inflated self-esteem, and our minds, you know, our rational mind is pretty much the master, and what it does, the male energies gives you a ego, and of course the female creative energies gives you creativity, and basically it gives you abilities and other aspects of your being, and either or, on one side or the other is dominant. uh, it pretty much indicates the male and female energies. But when you make the two into one, you're more stoic and you're balanced. And when you have that balance and you have that stoicism, basically, uh, what happens is, your brain releases DMT as a survival mechanism. Like your ego is a survival mechanism uh, that your body has, your mind has, rather, that protects you. And of course, uh, with your creativity and whatnot, there's the spiritual side and there's the carnal side, the physical side. And the spiritual side releases DMT as well as, the physical side of your mind, the male and female energies. But when they're both on the same page, when you're using 100% of your mind, and of course your thoughts, your vibrations, when they're very high, you basically have that. And of course, the DMT, like if you notice in your dreams, you can dream about things, and it's like you can do anything in your dreams. All things are possible in your dreams. Or you take away those blockages, those limiting beliefs, and then what happens is, uh, when you go to sleep at night, you don't have those limiting beliefs, and all things are possible. And then you have that creativity, that foolishness. But that foolishness is greater than man's wisdom, the analytical mind. And when that takes place, then all those blockages are taken out. So it really has to do with your vibrations and your beliefs. And so when your vibrations are very high, you basically have this phenomenon that happens, that things start coming true, and these events and these people and these places and these things, uh, start to manifest. And then sometimes, when you get very powerful, you can manifest things out of the quantum void. They just materialize, and they're physical. So, this whole existence that we have, is more or less just a facade. It's an illusion. And, like, let's say, for example, you got a pretty woman, and she has good looks and stuff. So then what that does, um, a lot of people, a lot of simps will give her money and stuff like that, and help her along the way, in hopes that they could get down her pants. But the thing is, that's kind of a woman's prerogative about beauty, and a man's prerogative, is, you know, to be handsome and stuff like that. And of course, with those two combinations, you know, men and women, you know, what they do is they use that to their advantage, and they use it to get through life. Uh, so anyway, people notice that you notice that you're getting treated better, and people go out of their way to help you sometimes, and that's because you know you have an advantage in the game of life. You have better looks. You have sometimes you know more intelligence, and you know with a woman, you know sometimes a beautiful woman, you know they don't really need to be intelligent, you know, and you can still find simps. So anyway, that's how that works. But you know, so you got your ego, and then of course you've got you know the subconscious mind. You got your creativity, your talents and abilities. You know the daughters of Sophia, and so anyway, you know you have this facade, you know your ego. But when you destroy your ego, you know what happens is then your authentic self shines through, and the poor in spirit, heaven's domain belongs to the poor in spirit. So you know what I'm trying to get at is you know what happens is you know when you're poor in spirit, you know, and basically when you're in a state of weakness, a state of lack, a state of need, what happens is the universe, rather, or really what it is your subconscious mind, well, or your mind in general, will set up things for you and lead you down the right path. And then what happens is there's a whole bunch of things down that path. And of course, a lot of supernatural experiences, you know, when a wave function gets collapsed, you know, then you see things that very few people see and hear things that very few people hear. So you have eyes to see and ears to hear. And really, that's really ultimately what that is when you're in a state of lack, you know. It says that God won't leave you empty handed. Really, what they're getting at is they're saying your mind, the seat of the soul, you know, won't leave you empty handed. And the windows of heaven open up and they give you a blessing. They pour down a blessing so big you can't contain it. So, really, um, so when you submit, you give in. You let go of everything. You let go of everything in your past, and you become a blank slate. And what happens is, you know, an empty cup gets filled with new ideas and new wine, and new wisdom. And you know, it's like all your old ideas. What is old has passed away, and what is new has just begun. So anyway, I've gotten to the point where you know I pretty much realize that everything's just an illusion. You know, I've seen things disappear and start on fire and freeze and earthquakes and ceilings open up, walls open up, walking through walls, uh, talking to people on the other side of a glass mirror, uh, you know, seeing dimensions in that mirror. So there's just so much stuff going on that, you know, you just find out that it's a very elaborate hoax, you know, and it's really ultimately just an illusion. Heaven is an illusion, and so is hell. And you know the whole idea of what hell is, and the whole idea of what heaven is. Uh, you know, I don't think there's much more to say other than the fact that once you get to your next life, you know, you'll find out that you're just going to be a restless wanderer, uh, seeing people, talking to people, or whatever. But you know, you're just going to find out that it's absolute freedom, where you have no bounds, nothing to stop you necessarily, and you'll just end up going everywhere without having any kind of responsibilities or any kind of direction. You're going to be aimless, and that's really the reason why I think a lot of people on the other side, they're just NPCs in the game, and that's really what I am. But you know, ultimately on the other side of it, you know, there's just a lot of lost souls. They haven't crossed over. per se, but maybe there isn't really much more. I mean, if heaven's going to pass away and this world is going to, this heaven and the one above are going to pass away. So yeah, it just means that they're going to disappear and roll up in your presence like a scroll. So anyway, the whole thing is it's just really a computer simulation. My mind, you know, sees everything around me, and they're all just electrical inputs, through my five senses. And of course, they seem tangible and they seem real. But the thing is you go outside and say, well, that's green grass, and it's not really green. Your mind interprets it as green, but in reality, it's not green at all. It's just the way it registers in your mind. It looks green. So you see all that, and then you find out that things disappear. And when they disappear, it's like you're taking the goggles off, and you find out that once you do that, things disappear and they roll up in your presence. It's a very high state of being. It's a very high vibration to get that to happen. But when you do, you'll know. And there's been other instances too, where I could see a window and a door across the hall, and I looked at it and I could see in the room. But as soon as it was out of my view, almost out of my view, gray film covered the window. So it's indicated to me that there was no activity in the room, and the whole room didn't exist until I seen it. It collapsed away function in my mind. And once it did that, once it registered in my mind, then it looked real. So anyway, there's that, and then it's like a video game. You're playing it, and you're progressing into the stages like on Minecraft, and you populate the world with everything you see and things that you recognize, and you have an effect on those things. And once you do, they materialize. So you might have an apple that you pick from a tree, and it looks real. You eat it. They call that a fitness reward, and it's a survival mechanism. Let's say I got the dashboard, and that's what this whole world is the dashboard, everything I see. And of course, when you take the goggles off, there is no dashboard, and you find out that everything just disappears. And there have been people that have been in like the white room experience where there is nothing there but just them. And I've had people tell me that. But I've seen the spirits, and I've seen all that. They just materialize out of nothing. And that's really how that works. But it's like the dashboard. If you have a dashboard in your airplane and you're flying around, you can use it to navigate. But it's like Plato's cave, and then you actually roll down the window or whatever. Let's say you got blinds on the window, or you're in a submarine and you can't see everything. You're just going by the instrumentation to navigate, and that's really what we as people do. So we're like playing this game. It unfolds and it looks real and tangible, but the CPU is producing all these images, and it's giving you the sense that it's real, but it's just a CPU, and that's really what people's brains are CPUs, and they're the ones that create the reality, and everyone creates their own reality, and then you have collective consciousness and everything. It's more like a one mind. I'm just one nerve in the whole elaborate plethora of nerves. So anyway, that's really all it is. We're just one little cell in the great big organism. So, but then the universe itself is actually small. If you realize just how big you are, that we're bigger than the universe in some ways, and that's just a small sliver of what we observe. So, anyway, that's all I got to say.